RedheadSiren, Insomnia Overnight, where ideas are born. It's better than counting sheep. Insomnia. For all who do not sleep.
One day, a photographer friend of mine dropped in to see me, just to have some tea. We had a lively conversation about a rather strange topic. He claimed that musicians in an orchestra should express emotions while playing, and not just stupidly look at the notes and occasionally glance at the conductor, especially if his baton is long enough to poke musicians right in their most vulnerable spot, the ears. I started recalling all my social outings to organ halls and other concert venues, and realized that I don't watch the orchestra at all. I couldn't care less about their faces, and I often close my eyes right after the conductor's first wave. At that moment, all the normal people around me probably think disdainfully, "She's sleeping at the concert. What a disrespect to art! Damn it!" But I'm actually watching movies at that moment. No, not the legendary ones about Schwarzenegger or some cool action flick with Jackie Chan. Just images of wild sandy deserts, a person spinning in dance, or a wolf's gaze float before my eyes. And sometimes there are no images at all, just emptiness. And for me, that's quite an indicator, whether the musicians are playing well or just going through the routine. I don't care if the violinist is shaking his head in ecstasy or scratching his leg with the bow between performances. I have seen various orchestras and choirs. Yes, sometimes I open my eyes at concerts, for example at the end when it is necessary to applaud. But I never looked closely at the performers' faces. Well, they buried their noses in the scores and stayed buried. But a friend, let's say by the nature of his work, could come up to them at a close distance and quite notice whether the musician went into the music he plays or only into the notes, so as not to forget the text. At first, I argued with him, said that it doesn't matter what a person's face looks like if they are creating something incredible at that moment. Music is more important than facial expressions. What's more important is whether this music, poem, prose evokes emotions in you personally or not. But by the end of the conversation, I started leaning towards the idea that he was probably right, and I just hadn't been interested in musicians' external appearances before. But how could I know what they looked like if I hadn't even looked at them? Maybe that very expression he was talking about was happening right there. On the other hand, not all expressions are equal. I haven't seen it myself, but my mom told me how she once witnessed such expression at a concert that she couldn't unsee, no matter how hard she tried. At first, everything was normal. The choir sang, the pianist accompanied, but the female conductor decided to liven up this boring gathering. To make the choir and audience fully immerse themselves in the piece, she crawled under the grand piano. The choir didn't even blink and continued singing. For them, it was probably just another morning rehearsal. but the audience couldn't stop blinking, watching the elderly woman waving her arms between the piano's legs. If I were her, I would go further. Hire people who insure acrobats in a circus, for example, and I conduct flying near the ceiling. If it's a performance, then only like this. I would attend that. Another conductor, in a fit of that same unfortunate expression, poked himself in the eye with his baton. In my opinion, it's better to be a boring musician than a one-eyed one. But that's just my humble opinion, of course. In this regard, the orchestra pit is the best solution for the orchestra. Less reason to show off. You stand there in the basement, send the music upstairs, and no one looks at you. Especially if you are some timpani player who has fewer notes in the entire piece than Jason Statham has hair. By the way, I really like orchestra parts, where you have to stand idle for an hour. Then hit the big drum once, then you are free again. Sip some cognac, play checkers until the next boom, which is also only in an hour. You can freelance as a copywriter during breaks and proudly tell your friends that you are playing Carmen tonight and pull out precious free tickets to the most famous opera. I, more than anyone, understand why all orchestra members look at the notes. Where else should they look? Well, not at the conductor, really. The conductor, with rare exceptions, is more for the show and to accept flowers. Well, and so that it doesn't get boring when someone is waving their hands in the air. There is some movement, it's more interesting to watch. And when the conductor waves not as he should, but as he sees best, he's an artist, then it's better to play according to the notes. They are more adequate. Otherwise, as they say, the fagotists hadn't even gotten their reeds wet, and the trombonists had already blown their load. After the conversation, I started thinking about how much internal expression should reflect external expression. Can you evaluate a musician as a professional if they hardly express anything with their body and face? So, I'm not talking about soloists, they are a separate matter, but about group performances. When, besides your personal worries about a sock slipping into your shoe, you need to blow into the oboe on time and simultaneously listen to your clarinet colleague's part. So, folks, here is what I wanted to ask. When you listen to an orchestra, if you do at all, do those mugs in tuxedos lost in musical ecstasy matter to you? Or are you, like me, more concerned with locating the buffet, restroom and timing the intermission? Hi everyone, I'm RedheadSiren and I improve my English here. Some of these stories are true from my life, but not always. Subscribe to my podcast, like it and share it with your friends. I would be happy. See you next time!